What's going on, everyone? You were listening to the Antonio Chavran Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Antonio Chavran. We got a little bit of a different episode here today. It's not just going to be me talking. I alluded to this in my last episode that I released just this past week. And today I'm going to be sending out my Mike Toomey interview. It was an amazing interview that I had with Mike. For those of you who don't know, I gave a little bit of his resume in the last episode. I also talk about it in the interview when I'm talking to him, when I'm opening it up. I give all his accolades and stuff. So I won't repeat myself, but just a brief summary. He was an MLB scout for many years for multiple teams, and then was also special assistant specifically with the Kansas City Royals for many years. Was with the team when they won not the Super Bowl, the World Series in 2015. I talked to him a lot about that, and as well as just what he's got going on with stuff, not outside of baseball, but outside of his career. He has a foundation. Really, just a genuine guy. You know, he loves to give back to kids, and his foundation is in Colombia, and he talks a lot about Latin kids and Latin players in baseball. I think it's a really good interview. Y'all are going to really enjoy it. Now, it is just audio because of some technical stuff that we were dealing with, and just at the time, the convenience, it was just better to get audio. So it'll just be strictly audio. So sit back, relax, listen to it while you're working out, while you're driving, whatever the case may be, whatever you're doing right now, just sit back and listen and enjoy. Yeah, it's a really good interview, like I said, and I want to thank Mike again for taking the time to sit with me. It was an over an hour interview slash conversation, and he didn't need to do that, but he did. I really do appreciate it again, Mike. And yeah, so everyone sit back, enjoy, and take a listen here on the Antonio Chaudan Sports Podcast with Mike Toomey. Again, a very impressive resume here with this time at George Washington University Colonels. He has also has a 38-year run in Major League Baseball, where he worked with organizations such as the San Francisco Giants, Texas Rangers, Cleveland Indians, now the Guardians, New York Mets, Montreal Expos / Washington Nationals, and the Kansas City Royals. Won Major League Scout of the Year in 1992. Inducted into the George Washington Hall of Fame, the Mid-Atlantic Major League Hall of Fame, and just in May of 2019 was inducted into the Professional Baseball Scouts Hall of Fame. Am I missing anything, Mike, or is that
Well, I
everything?
think I think I think that's good enough. I was very blessed to have a lot of support from from my peers, who are many, and I love the game. I enjoyed playing, of course, and I was fortunate because as a youngster, my father was a offensive coordinator at Florida State and in Maryland, so he drug me around with him. When I was a kid. So I was very fortunate to be around good coaches and to watch some of the great athletes, whether it be baseball, football, basketball, mostly at the University of Maryland. And I think that gave me a sense or a feel for uh, athletes, leaders, which separated the real good ones from the everyday type players. And from there, I played three sports that I love, but of course, because I wasn't a big guy, I gravitated and played baseball, and the rest is history.
So I wanted to talk about your time at St. John's High School. So at the time when you went, it was still a military school at the time, and I read up on that your dad was a Marine, and he liked the fact that St. John's gave you that military like discipline. Can you go more into what your time was like at St. John's and how that really shaped you both as a player and as a person?
I really didn't want to go to St. John's. I had a lot of my buddies that I had played with, mostly Legion baseball at Cheverly, most were Northwestern High School or DeMatha guys. But Dad, being a captain in the Marines and an Iwo Jima guy, felt that the military experience would be something that would help me, going forward. And at that time, St. John's was a uh, all guys school, and now it's a you have the girls and the boys. And but we had the Christian Brothers. They were great teachers. They were good guys. They if we were out of control or not doing what we're supposed to do, you would be responsible or accountable for what you did. So, and we had a really good group of guys. We're a class of '69, and we still talk, and
That's great.
we still keep in touch with each other. We're concerned about health, and we've lost some guys. So that
Yeah,
camaraderie that we had was a very special one. That's for sure.
that's great. I mean, I'm not dating you at all. I mean, you still look great. You look at you, you look like you're no older than 50. So I'm giving you that definitely for sure. But no, I think there's definitely something to be said about, um, you know, keeping in touch with guys that you grew up with, that you have those bonds with. There's a lot of people I went to high school with that I don't really talk to anymore. And I'm only what 6 years removed from graduating high school. So, that in and of itself is definitely commendable. So I wanted to talk about from St. John's, then going to George Washington, but it wasn't straight from St. John's to George Washington. You actually started at Montgomery College, and I know that's something that you take a lot of pride in. And when it came to that route that you took, can you talk a little bit more about your time at Montgomery College and why is it important for a lot of people to know that this is a type of route that a lot of athletes can and maybe even should take?
I think the junior college situation is more prevalent now than it's ever been, because of this portal. And here's the deal: that these coaches that are coaching are getting paid very well now on Division One. And I think a lot of times the players and the parents have visions of grandeur. And what the junior college did for me, I wasn't a big guy anyway, but I got to stay close to home. Economically, it was good, very good for my family. Um, the classes were small. I got to know my teachers, and they got to know me by name. Um, it was the other thing was is that I felt like I was going to play there, which I did. I wasn't worried about Division One at the time. I wanted to play, and I think a lot of kids nowadays they'll go to Division One school. I know some kids that we've had the last couple of years, no at bats, 2 innings. Um, they get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
They go to a big school and they're not ready. Mom did the wash for them the whole time. Now they're responsible. It's a big adjustment for that kids.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a lot of calls over the years. Well, you are right, coach. I didn't get to play. And if you look at the players that are junior college guys that have played in the big leagues, and I'll name a few for you. Albert Pujols, pretty good player.
Yeah.
Kurt Schilling, pretty good player. Kirby Puckett, great player. Brian Bryce Harper, junior college guy. Jackie Robinson, I think, went to Garden Grove Junior College before he went to UCLA.
Wow.
So these are just some names of some, and have some Mike Piazza was a 76, 62nd round choice, with the Dodgers, and he went to Miami-Dade. So I know I wasn't mature physically, mentally, socially to take that on right away, and I got stronger, and I didn't get lost in the shuffle academically. All my courses transferred to GW, and it was really, I think, more kids and players should think about going to the junior college. I think a lot of parents are concerned about which sticker they're going to put on their SUV and try to keep up with the Joneses, when in fact it's not a good call.
Right. And hey, I mean, I think having a raptor as a mascot's pretty cool, Not a lot of
Absolutely,
those.
absolutely.
Yeah. So you go from Montgomery College to George Washington. You have the success that you do there. Again, like I said, you were named MVP 1974. You finish your time at George Washington and you become a kindergarten teacher out of all things. How did that come about right after college?
Well, I didn't know what I really wanted to do at the time, and my father said, "Look, Montgomery County is a very good school system. He said, you better take that job. And so I did with a little bit of reluctance.
Hmm.
I had a good principal there, Jerry Frick, who I got acclimated very quickly. I love the kids. I had worked at some parks while I was in high school and college, so I had a good feel for teaching. Um, I played a lot of the duck, duck, goose, and a lot of squirrels and trees. Some of the favorite games back then. And then I got a call from Bob Ferris, the athletic director at GW. Now I'm only 1 year out of school, and he said, I'd like you to take the baseball job. Well, I was flabbergasted. And of course, one of my mentors who was, I know, responsible for this was Bob Talent. And Bob was Pat Riley's roommate and played basketball at University of Kentucky.
Wow.
And I think that Bob got into it with a little bit with Adolph Rupp and ended up at GW and was the all-time leading scorer. He pumped in about 40, 36 a game. In fact, I think Bob was one of the top 5 players in the country scoring wise when he was playing at GW. And then he became the coach there and had some big wins against Maryland while he was there and did a heck of a job coaching. But Bob was the guy that kind of sold me on GW, playing at a Division I school. He thought that I'd play every day, and which I did. And I fit in there, good academic school. I had some great teachers. Most of them getting ready to retire. Ray Hankin, who played for the NFL Giants, and Phyllis George, who was a lady teacher who, mentored me as well. So I got in at the right time, and I enjoyed my time at GW. A lot of good people there. We played a great fall schedule. Back then, they had a fall league with Howard Catholic, George Mason, Georgetown, us, and we would play one game during the week and 2 games, 2 doubleheaders on the weekends. Fall was a great time to play. We played a lot of baseball, and so I enjoyed my time there. Really a great time.
So when you become head coach, you're like what, 23, 24, 25?
I think 23. I think I was the youngest Division I coach in the country at that time, and it wasn't easy. I actually had to coach guys that I played with, and there
I
was a
was
lot
gonna
of
say, yeah.
there was a lot of resentment there. There really was. Like, okay, who does this guy think he is coming in? And it took me a couple of years to get my guys in there. And I got a good mix of good young players and a good mix of some junior college guys, and our team really thrived. We had good camaraderie on the ball club, and that's what got us over the hump. We started to put some wins together, and we gained confidence, and we won at that time the ECAC tournament against James Madison. We won the league against Penn State. And then we went on, had a good run all the way down to Tallahassee. We're playing Arkansas, who was the eventual uh, national runner-up that particular year. And we actually lost to them 12-11. So if I had a little more experience and was a better coach, we might have gone even a little farther. It's the old I wish I knew then what I know now. So,
Yeah.
but no, those are great times. Had a great bunch of kids, and to see them a couple of months ago, I hadn't seen these guys in 43 years. So it was very
Wow.
emotional. And you can imagine the 320-foot home runs are now 415, and a lot of those great stories. So it was very rewarding time.
Absolutely. Well, talk a little bit about the East Regionals a little bit more. I know particularly a team in Florida State, you had more of a personal connection to it, especially given that your dad had coached at Florida State. What was that like for you dealing with that at the time?
That was really, really exciting. The fact that, I was going back, uh, quote unquote, home, where I had gone, I guess, as far as first or second grade. And Don Falls was still the trainer there, who was the trainer, when my dad was at Florida State, where the head coach was Tom Nugent. And,
Wow.
going back there and having an opportunity to play, them in Arkansas and Florida, Seton Hall, Delaware always had good clubs, was really a highlight, in our career. We had a good club, and you know, uh, thinking about everything that all the resources the other teams had, and for our guys to accomplish what they did. I mean, I feel like a spoke in the wheel. I had coaches on the field. These kids really they meshed together, and they put a lot of time in. We had 6 a.m. practices in the morning, and these guys paid the price. They really did, and they're to be commended for. I felt so strongly about their accomplishments that I brought them all beautiful rings. And it just so happens that Kevin Ziegler, who was one of my players earlier years, worked for Jostens, and he put together a hell of a ring for our guys. And they were kind of really shocked that everybody got a beautiful ring. Our John Norris, who was my assistant, did a great job, as did Tom Sokowski, who was on our athletic training staff. And so it was so happy to see those guys open the box and get those wonderful rings and have the memories that they can have the rest of their lives.
Well, I was going to ask this question a little bit later, but I feel like it's relevant to ask you now. When it comes to players that you're looking at, that you're scouting, you talk about these guys, these 6 a.m., getting up at 6 a.m., these 6 a.m. practices. Um, that's not just skill. That comes down to discipline. That comes to hunger. That comes down to more so of the person than the player. When it comes to scouting, whether if it's at the collegiate level or at the pro level, what are some certain, I guess, checkpoints that you like to look at and look at the box and check off when you're scouting players, thinking that, yeah, that's a guy that can be successful in baseball?
Well, I think well, I know the five tools of the run, field, hit, power, and throw. And I'll say this: I got to manage shortly after for a couple of years in the Carolina League, and I probably wasn't ready for that at the time. But the thing that I'll say is that my measuring stick, Rafael Belliard was my shortstop, who was a major league shortstop, played for the Braves. Bobby Cox felt strongly enough about Belliard that he got him over there for his late inning defense. Jose Oquendo with Lynchburg, he was a major league infielder. Tony Fernandez, who just passed away with Toronto, was an all-star shortstop. Julio Franco was an all-star shortstop. I mean, Jackie Gutierrez from Columbia played for Boston, was another above average major league fielder. So, in essence, you had kids 17, 18 years old that were all solid average or above average major league fielders. So, when I scouted and I went out to watch a young infielder, there was no comparison. I mean, people talk about, well, my Johnny's a heck of a player and my Tommy's a heck of a player, and he might be. But when you talk about separating the wheat from the chaff, and you see these guys that have plus arms and agility and quickness and first step quickness and soft, sure hands, that's my Rolodex. And I'll tell you what, it just rules out a ton of guys. And I think Darryl Strawberry was in the league then. Billy Bean would play center field, who was the Oakland GM. And of course, Moneyball, that book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those type of players and being around that league, which is Carolina League, is a very good league, um, was really instrumental in helping me make a lot of my decisions once it came to scouting. I take that experience as one that was very instrumental in my scouting career.
So you mentioned a few players that were international players. I know you scouted in countries like Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, Colombia, Japan, Korea, just to name a few, right? What would you
Absolutely.
s- what would you say is the difference, if there is one, in the general makeup of guys that you scout from other countries compared to the US? This can be, physically, just like what they bring to the table in terms of skill, their upbringing, how that builds their character. What would you say are some differences with other countries compared to US based players?
Well, let me just say we have a lot of great players in the United States, that's for sure. And you look at these young kids that have come up, that are playing. They just brought the Holiday kid up. I personally feel they may have brought him up a little bit too early, but I've seen him play amateurly. I was a coach on the baseball factory All-American game, and I got a chance to see him play when he was 16 or 17. But when you look at the Trouts and you look at these young kids that come up, you look at Salvador Perez and the Hosmers and those guys that came up
Yeah.
at a young age. I mean, it tells you what we have. But the thing about the Latin kid is most of them, a lot of them live on dirt floors. They're poor, and that's the only way they get off those islands. I mean, it's a survival of the fittest. That's the one way for a lot of these kids that they're going to make their living, their family. In fact, there's a lot of pressure on those kids to get an opportunity to sign. So I think more than not, I think as a whole, that the Latin kid is a little hungrier than not all of the American kids, but of some of the American kids that we have, and they train all year round, but our guys do too. But the Latin kid is a driving force in trying to. I'll give you an example. I went to a tryout in Medellin, Colombia, and because of the problems that they've had in Venezuela, the Venezuelan kids came over to play there, which they do now. And every kid, there were kids as young as 12 and 13-year-olds that had agents,
Wow.
and which is amazing.
That's
And
crazy.
it is crazy. And a lot of these kids aren't going to play, but they're being watched very closely. Um, they're kids that are you're projecting what this kid will be when he gets a little older. He might have a very loose arm, a repeatable delivery. You might see the plate discipline, the bat speed, and they tie these kids up when they're 14 years old. And I'll get a call from, maybe a parent or somebody says, "Well, John just graduated from Duke. He's 23. He wants a chance." And I'm like, "Really?" I said, "Do you realize that these kids are being signed at 14? That he's 9 years younger than your son?" And what happens, Enrique, over there is what they do with these kids. All these teams have academies, and
Right.
all the academies are in Dominican Republic, and they'll take the kids that they sign. There's probably 50 kids in those camps, and most of them are located in Boca Chica now, and right outside of Santo Domingo. And it's 24 hours a day baseball. I mean, they're enclosed. It's almost like like a prison. I mean,
Yeah.
you have security guards. The kids get up at 7, they're on the field at 8, and they go till noon. And half the guys will get on a bus and go over to play the Dodgers, and then the other group will stay at home and work on fundamentals. Dayton Moore sent me down to work with some of our younger hitters, and some days I would travel with the team that was playing the game, and other days I would stay back and and work with some of the kids on specific skills, just like the other coaches would do. So at that young age, it's a heck of a lot of baseball. But those guys eat, sleep, and
And
drink
breathe.
baseball
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
breathe. And you know what people don't realize, I just saw a kid in Colombia, which really did my heart good. I saw him hitting fungos with a stick and a rock. And I took videos of that, and it was one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. I also saw kids over there. Remember when we were kids, we used to take the bat, and I'd put my hands on top of yours until we got to the top of the bat, and that would mean, okay, we're going to hit first. And I still see these kids that have makeup games. When we were kids, we played Pitcher's Mountain Poison, Hot Box, Pepper, 500, and I think our kids of today have missed out on that generation.
Hmm.
For the most part, the Latin kid takes a lot more pride in their defense, especially infielders. I mean, our guys want to hit, but these guys, you have to kick them off the field to. And you know what? They develop such great hands because a lot of them never had a glove. And I see
Exactly.
kids over there that have cardboard. They have cardboard to use for their gloves. So they'll play games off the wall and do anything they can to enhance their chances going forward. And when a guy like a Soto comes home and they go watch him practice, and especially in Venezuela and Dominican, they bring home bats and balls, and a lot of the great instructors live there, and they share the information with those kids so that when they come over, the better ones that can get out of the academy, when they come over, they're ready. They've done a tremendous job of with English speaking English programs before, Belliard, the only word he knew in English was pizza. I said, Rafi, we got to get you a little more expanded with your English. But now it's a different ball game. They teach them how to, take care of their money, investments. Talk a lot about the do's and don'ts, staying away from the drugs and the alcohol. So when the kids come here, they're a lot more prepared than they used to be 20, 25 years ago. So it's just that these kids have really have been up against it as far as not having the facilities or not having the resources that our kids have. So once they get here, boy, they're like, "Wow, I'm in heaven. Let's go." So
No, absolutely. I mean, when you were talking about when like a guy like Juan Soto comes home and brings all of these different uh baseball equipment, whether if it's bats, it's gloves, it's batting gloves, helmets. I thought of a more uh personal example that I can think of, not with me specifically, but my dad.
mhm.
I know so for those of you listening, how this initial relationship started, not was because it wasn't because I came across Mike or he came across me. Just so happened that stars freaking align here. My dad is at Lifetime, the gym that we go to. Mike is behind him in line in the cafe. And were you wearing the way my dad described it was that you were wearing a Royals jacket or something Royals
Yeah,
related.
yeah. I
That's
still wear the Royal stuff. I'm still a fan. Yep.
There you go. So that automatically sparked a conversation. And so obviously that's how I was obviously introduced through Mike. But my dad growing up, he would talk to me about how the team that he was on that was through this organization that Mike Chato ran in Kansas City, they would travel to Mexico, specifically to Chihuahua, which if you aren't familiar with Chihuahua, not just with you, Mike, just in general, for anyone who's listening, it's all desert. It is hot. It's a cowboy type of town. And they would go down in buses from Kansas City, Missouri, down to Chihuahua in Mexico. I mean, I can't even imagine how much that ride would have sucked, first off. Um, but they would go there, and it's not like they had like a bunch, they being my dad and the team, but they had the basics. They had their bats, they had their gloves, cleats, uniforms. And my dad would tell me how these kids, well, they didn't have the same uniforms, that's for sure. It was all just like a hodgepodge of whatever they had available. But they didn't really have the type of equipment that they needed, and my dad felt horrible. They would win, they would play these games, but they always made sure that because this happened over a few different occasions when they went down to Chihuahua to play. And then when they would leave, their equipment, they would leave their bats, their gloves, and stuff like that. And just him describing to me um, just how excited these kids were in having this type of equipment that they just didn't have available to them. Yeah, when you were talking about how these MLB players that have made it, that are stars, that represent their countries, and they go back and they, give back to their communities. That just made me think of that a little bit. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Very proud. And I have a foundation for children in Colombia, outside of Cartagena. And the reason I picked Colombia was because of the time they really had only two Colombian big leaguers, and that was um, Renteria, who got the
Okay.
winning hit in the World Series when when Miami won the World Series,
Hmm.
and Orlando Cabrera, shortstop with Montreal, those are the only two guys. So they weren't getting the instruction. They weren't getting the equipment. They didn't have the teams. There were some good teachers there, but we had clinics. And if you look at the amount of players that have signed, in fact, Colombia won what, the WBC one year, 2 years ago. They beat the Dominican for that championship. Was a big lift to the
Yeah.
confidence of that country. And I picked Colombia because of that. I felt like Venezuela and Dominican had enough of the equipment and enough of the amount of players and they've opened a lot more camps and academies over there for these kids, and they're getting better instruction. You have guys like Manny Mota, a great hitter with the
Yeah.
Dodgers and coach, and he has like soup kitchens for these people and instruction, and they have really given back to these kids, and it gives them a little bit of a jump, and so that's why you see a lot more Latin players playing in the United States. And I'll say this too while I have you. A country that really impresses me is Japan. The
Oh
the
my
the,
gosh, yeah.
the fans there are just fanatics, and I have to tell you that the Japanese players and coaches are so innovative that I don't know that ever been to another country that has the drills that they have to enhance the play of the players. And what a lot of people don't realize is that they go, well, they only have Otani and Matsui and some of these Science who's pitching with the Mets, those guys that are playing here now. But there would be more Japanese players, and the reason there's not is because you have to pay, say, 3, 4, $5 million just to be able to sit down and talk with the officials to try to get a player over there. That's before
Wow.
you even sign a contract. So the ball is smaller over there. The fences are shorter. These are just some things that most of our people here don't know. But passion, uh, like all get out. I mean, to go to a game in Japan and see the cheering and boy, do they love baseball and do they love their teams. That was one of my best experiences. Really, was going over there. We had a scout with the Mets at that time. His name is O Jimmy, and he about killed me. He had me in trains, planes, uh, cabs, rickshaws, drag. I said, Jimmy, you're killing me, man. I mean, and the same thing with Korea. He had me, and they have high school tournaments in Korea and Japan, and it's like life or death. These kids just, if they don't win, they just bawling their eyes out. I mean, this is such the event of their lifetime
Yeah.
to play in a tournament over there. And so there's a lot of good players in Japan, but they don't like losing their players over there. I'll tell you that. So that's why it's a little harder to get some of those guys over here.
Well, I think that was great insight because I feel like, well, I feel like the WBC was definitely a showcase for a lot of these different countries in just how they play baseball, right? Obviously, Japan won this most recent one in 2023. Mexico, man, they had them in the semifinals, and I think a lot of people were surprised with how well the Mexican team did. Having the Mexican background that I do, I was very proud to see how well they did. Um, but I mean, with Japan, I think really, aside from the players, the star of the show were the fans, like you said, not just their, um, how passionate they are of baseball, but I always saw clips on social media of them cleaning up the stands after the games. Just
Oh yeah,
their overall respect to the sport, to the venues where they play, that was on full display. And I feel like that painted a whole new picture of how the Japanese see their baseball, how they treat it, how they look at it, how they idolize it. So I think it's really cool that you were able to shed some light on that and really explain too why aren't we seeing more Otani like play now. Otani, aside from him being Japanese, is just an alien, right? So when I
oh
say
yeah,
Otani type players, I more so mean like players from Japan. But
right.
that's yeah, I mean it's interesting that and I think an equivalent to that, which I don't know how much you follow soccer. but La Liga, or I'm sorry, Liga Mex, which is the Mexican league for soccer, they're notorious for wanting to keep their homegrown players in Mexico. That's why a lot of Mexican fans get frustrated when they have a little stint over in Europe because that's the cream of the crop is getting your players to Europe because that's where the best leagues are. It's where the best teams are, the best players. So I just found that interesting. That was kind of a comparison I could make to those who like soccer. Um, what do you think that's about? Why do you think Japan is really hell bent on keeping their players in Japan and not wanting them to go overseas to the MLB?
Well, I just think that they follow the players so close over there. Those guys are heroes. And I'll tell you a great story. Just going over there for when these guys are working out, the fans will be packed, and if a guy hits the ball off the tee in practice or makes a good infield play just in regular practice, they're clapping and cheering. I mean, just for a play that a guy makes, if he dives to his right and makes a play in practice, they all clap and they get up and they go to these workouts. And they have their own heroes. They have the autograph signings just like they do here. And for them to lose you know, some of these great players that have come over here, the Matsuis, and it's devastating. They like I think, and I think the reason that you see Japan that do so well over the states is because they are very disciplined. They've
Yeah,
played together more. They know where to go on bunt coverages. Uh, we're bad at bunting now. Nobody wants to bunt. Uh, they execute. They execute. Man on second, hit the ball the right side, get over. First and second, nobody out, bunt, get the runners over. We don't do that anymore. Our game has changed.
yeah,
It's all about how far and how hard. And you know, I think that the reason that they have done well internationally. I mean, look at the little leagues when they would play us. I mean, it was like night and day.
yeah,
You know, and our kids were so overmatched because of maybe the lack of coaching or and our society's like that now. We're in a society of individuals entitlement.
yeah,
They play together as a team, and I think that's the reason. I mean, you have a lot of all stars playing for the states and these other countries, but they've never really played together.
yeah,
It takes a lot of time to mesh. Uh, Before you go to a tournament. These kids have played together. They know the tendencies of what kids are going to do on certain double plays and where to play guys and they execute. Like I said, and that's the biggest difference is the execution of the game and the discipline of the game. So I think that has a lot to do with it. They like that style of play and they don't want to lose those type of guys that play baseball. They're baseball players.
yeah. Well, I think this is a perfect segue into the 2015 Kansas City Royals. And the reason I say that is because I mean, when I look back and I watch the highlights, and I definitely watch the highlights more than I'd like to admit. Um, Given where we are now in 2024. I mean, hey, the team looks good now. Yeah, I'm getting some flashbacks to that 2015 team here and there. But the reason why I say it's a perfect segue is because this team in particular was known for getting guys on base and taking advantage. Just, get turning it on the right time, right place. Like I remember specifically, and obviously I want to hear more of your perspective because you were with the team at this particular moment in time. And I think of that Astro series that we had and
Oh boy.
how, oh man, I mean, it was the start of that Astro dynasty for sure. But I don't know why. I remember Kobe Rasmus hitting that moonshot. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's over. And we were down in the series. I thought it was over. And then we get guys again. it's not about individuals. It was never about individuals with this particular team. You got guys like Paulo Orlando, um, you, Alcides Escobar, Lorenzo Kane, Eric Hosmer, Alex, then the last name is slipping my mind. Rios, Alex Rios.
Right. He's a
Like,
Mexican pitcher,
yeah. And
right?
so these are guys, I mean, obviously more like Hosmer and Salvi, those are the big guns, right, on the team from time to time. Mike Moustakas, Alex Gordon. We just knew how to play as a team. And the amount of pride I had in that 2015 team should have won in 2014. I still have nightmares of that pop-up fly from Salvi in the bottom of the ninth, game seven. Freaking Sandoval falls on
Yep.
his back with the ball in his hand. They win the World Series. I wish I could forget it, but I can't. But you know what? I guess we redeemed ourselves the year after. But I would just you're hearing this from a fan perspective, right? I love my Kansas City Royals. I love my Kansas City teams. What was it like being a part of that team and just witnessing the run that they went on?
Well, Mike Pasick, who pitched in the big leagues and was the minor league coordinator for Baltimore, and myself, amongst other guys, we were two of the advanced scouts that would go ahead of the team, and we would eventually have to put up a pretty lengthy report on where to play guys and what's their release times, where can we go with a strike, who's the one guy that we can't let beat us, uh, what's their hot zone, what are they going to throw in this situation. So we stayed first. We stayed with the Yankees until they lost, and then we were on the Mets after that. So you would probably spend about 2 weeks with each club. And the fun thing was we never got out of New York City. I felt like a resident there, and so did Mike and myself. But I'll tell you, you really felt a part of the club. When you were in that situation, you would ride on the buses, and you were really a part of the team. You were riding the airplane with the team. Those are beautiful perks. Things we stayed in the best hotels, maybe $500 a night.
Wow.
It's just a fantastic experience. Sometimes we couldn't get in a certain hotel, so we would go to another nice place. But and we were tired. We had to go back to L.A. One more time after flying all the way back to New York, and we were really on fumes at that time. But when we eventually won the last game in New York, it was a great time in our lives, and we met some nice people from New York. The Mets fans knew we were Kansas City guys, and
Yeah.
you know, but it was rewarding. I'll tell you a guy that I felt really helped our club, and you don't hear about him much, was Ben Zobrist.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh, yeah.
Zobrist, and I said something to him. We were down in the locker room after the game, having a couple beers, talking to the players, and they would thank us for doing a good job on the advanced scouting. And I said to Ben, I said, man, I don't think we could have won this without you. Ben Zobrist was a basketball player at Nazarene College, I think in Iowa somewhere, and they talked him into going out on a baseball tryout, and he did. And you know, the scouts there liked him. He signed. Not at that time. He transferred to Dallas Baptist, and which is a very good baseball program, and he played there a year or two. And then I think Ben was originally drafted and signed with Milwaukee, if I'm not mistaken. But the thing about him is he could play short, he could play second, third, outfield. Uh, Very versatile. And this is why I try to encourage kids to play different positions, especially everybody wants to be a shortstop. If I'm a coach and you know I see a kid of equal ability, I always try to encourage them to take balls at second base as well, because in reality, because of the great shortstops, you might end up at second base going forward. I'm going to take the kid that can play both
Right.
over the kid that can play one. But getting back to the subject here, I think that for me and Mike and to be together and to write the reports, it was very time consuming. And of course, you felt a little bit of pressure to make sure you got things right. I remember one instance when we were playing Baltimore in the first series a year before, where we swept them. I was so immersed. O'Day was a reliever, sidearm reliever for Baltimore, and he had a great what you would call a bastard move to second base, and that so worried me. I kept saying, look out for the move, look out for that move, because I didn't want in a clutch situation for I that we got picked off at second,
Right.
and he never used it. But there's certain things that you accentuate. What trick plays might they have? Things like when do they hit and run? What's the count when they hit and run? Can you pick up some of their signals maybe when you're coaching? Anything you can do to enhance the ball club and get an edge on the other team is really important. I mean, you're bearing down on every pitch. So, great experience, something that you'll never have again. To be around the players and the team and have to go in front of the coaches and Dayton Moore, the general manager, and put your spiel out there. And they wanted to know about the team. And of course, they knew a lot about the team. We were spokes in the wheel, really. But in case they had any new plays or maybe you found a hole with a hitter that wasn't exploited before, anything to get an edge. But that was really one of the highlights of my baseball career and something that we'll always remember. And Mike Pazek was fabulous. And, we kid each other and, we say, well, our record's 8-1, as fan scouts. So that was a great time.
I want to talk about two players in particular that I know you were heavy advocates for bringing over to the Royals, and those are Lorenzo Cain, Lo Cain, as we know and love him to be, and Alcides Escobar. At the time, they were with the Milwaukee Brewers, and I read that you were a heavy proponent in bringing them over to the team. Ended up making that trade for a right-handed pitcher, Zach Greinke. Well, let me ask two things. What were things in their games, maybe even in their personalities, that wanted you to bring them over to the team? And how crucial do you think their roles were in this World Series run? I mean, there are two plays I think of right off the bat with both of them. Obviously, that leadoff inside the park home run in the World Series against the Mets that Alcides had. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. And then I remember Lorenzo Cain being on first base. I can't remember who got the hit, but all I remember is Lorenzo Cain never stopped running, went all the way to home. We ended up winning that particular game 4-3. And like that, him running around those bases, not stopping, obviously was crucial in us getting that win in that series. Those are just two that I can think off the top of my head that were huge reasons why we won those particular games and inevitably the World Series. What was it that wanted you to bring these guys over, and why were they so crucial to this team?
Well, one quick thing, side note, I had never seen another guy score on a single from first base other than Chuck Hitton, who was the last Washington Senator to hit over 300. Chuck was
That's a stat.
he was a head baseball coach at Howard University, an all-star player. I coached against Chuck when he was at Howard, had great teams, always had great athletes at Howard. And it was an honor to be a friend of Chuck's. He just passed away about 6-7 years ago. Great guy. I learned a lot from him. We played against each other all the time. But going back, he was the only guy that I can remember. I think Chuck was from down around Wilson, Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and I can remember him as a kid scoring on a hit. But Cain, I can't take all the credit for getting those guys over. Again, a spoke in the wheel, just a guy that had seen both. I saw Cain when he was in. I'll never forget. He was in A ball playing in the Florida State League, and boy, was he a raw kid. I don't think he played baseball till late in his, later, maybe high school, junior year, senior year.
Wow.
And that's what intrigued me even more because you had a guy that was, he had good size. There was some swing and miss there, but you would see the flashes of power. And knowing that he was a work in progress, he was a kid that with some projection always interested me. He had the tools. He could run and throw, and every once in a while he'd get into one. And and our scouts did a good job following him. So when we got in the meetings, all of us had a positive spin on this guy. And of course, he had some great years for us. Was a difference maker. Could really go get the ball in the outfield. Saved us a lot of runs. Got some clutch hits. Escobar was a sure-handed shortstop. Made all the plays. Made some fabulous plays in all directions. Great first step. Great agility. Uh, plus arm. Online carry on his throws. Made a lot of big plays. And in fact, I saw him in Double A. He was playing in the oh gosh, what they call it? Not the Eastern League, but anyway, at that time, it might have been high A ball. But anyway, what an impressive player. He'd get a clutch hit when he needed to. He used the whole field. He would execute. And it's funny. Dayton asked. We sat around the table like they did in Moneyball. That was the one thing in that movie that reminded of what we did and go over players. And he asked us all who's the one guy that we can't lose or do without. And some guys said Hosmer, other guys said Moustakis, other guys said Kane. But the guy that I said, and I'm not taking or blowing my own horn, I said the shortstop. We need to keep him. And they said, well, I think it shocked a lot of the guys. And they said, well, why? I said, well, he makes all the plays. And sometimes we look for kids that make the fabulous plays. But if you have somebody that can make all the plays, and here's the other thing about him. If you go back and look at his record, I think he played in more successive games than most people would ever think about. If he was hurt, he would play hurt. But he answered the bell every time he went out there, and he was a steady Eddie.
He
And
was.
if you have a guy like that that can do those things on an everyday basis and post every day, regardless of your health, and his makeup was off the chart. And you know what? The makeup is the sixth tool for guys. We need to put more credence in the sixth tool: the heart, the intestinal fortitude. First guy at the field, working extra. Uh, you know, have some life to the body. Great makeup. Great teammate, unselfish type player. We need more guys like that. I think we've gotten away from those type of guys. I always felt like, okay, we've got the five tools, but if you have a player that has those six tools, um, that those mentalities and the passion to win and to play. You play every day like he did. He's got to love the game, and those kind of guys are gonna. When the chips are down, those kind of guys are going to come through for you. And I really felt that we could not do without this guy, and I still felt that way. He played up. I think he played for Washington, if I'm not mistaken, a little bit later in his career. And even if he didn't play on an everyday basis, he could be a good mentor to some of these younger kids coming up. He's like another coach. And
Right.
if the skills wane and the legs start to go, so be it. He could fill in, and that he wasn't going to get exposed if you used him right later on. But the fact that uh, with his experience, he could help a lot of these young kids that were just coming up playing the infield. So what a bonus to have a guy like that. And going back to Belliard, he is now our minor league infield coordinator. So especially with the Latin kids that maybe don't speak the language as well, these guys are integral parts of the organization. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, uh, you always knew you were going to get some electricity from him. Always was aggressive on the first pitch. Always went for it. That's what I remember. And yeah, I mean that team was special, and what that meant to Kansas City, right? Not winning a World Series since 1985 when George Brett was on the team. I mean, I know that was huge for the city, and I can speak for Kansas City too, just with how the sports culture has been with the Chiefs as well, since getting Mahomes winning three Super Bowls in the past 5 years. I mean, we're on the up and up for sure. And I won't jump the gun with how you feel about the Royals so far this season. I want to talk about one other thing before we get there. Um, there has been a lot of parity in baseball. I would say over these past 8, 9 years. We know the dominance the Astros have had in this time span over the past 6, 7 years or so, but only two World Series to show for it. Obviously, they have appeared in four, but are 2-2. Teams like the Rangers that just won this past World Series, first ever World Series. The Braves, first World Series win since 1995. The Dodgers, first since '88. The Nationals, and I know you were probably a very happy camper when they won the World Series in 2019. Obviously, the Astros winning their first ever in 2017, then obviously their second a few seasons later. The Cubs winning their first ever, or not first ever, but the first since 1908. Ben Zobrist also on that team. He hopped from one World Series team to another. And then obviously with the Royals winning their first one since 1985. What would you say have been some reasons for all this parity in the majors? And to follow up with that, what would you say are some key factors when it comes to building a championship team?
Well, that's a great question, and I don't know that there's one or two things you can put your finger on. I will say this though, I don't think people realize how important the free agent draft is, and now more than ever, baseball is hurt by the fact that we only have 20 rounds. Less guys are getting a chance to play, and with that being said, uh, they always said if you get one major league player, one out of a draft, you've had a good draft. So where does that put the emphasis? It puts the emphasis on uh, the Latin American player, where you dig a guy out, from Venezuela, Dominican Republic. You better supplement that one guy that's going to play in the big leagues with three or four guys over there, prospects over there. I remember Baltimore was the only team in Major League Baseball that didn't have an academy. And I think it hurt them a little bit when they were down. They didn't have, many Latin players at the time. But I think that the biggest thing is having that supplement especially now when you only have 20 rounds. I think Baltimore, to get off the subject, has done a great job. It's one thing to you have to draft really well. And it's one thing for Baltimore when they were losing to have the first picks in the last couple of drafts. Boy, did they pick the right guys. And that's a testament to their scouting department uh, and what they've done to move these guys up uh, and play at the big leagues in such a young age. But if you look at the records of these teams, a lot of them are what 500,
Yeah.
and they're so close together. I think health is a big part of it. Uh, if you look recently of all of the rotator cuffs and the UCLs that we've had lately,
Yeah.
it's overwhelming. And I think one of the big things is staying healthy. And you know what? You have guys jumping around so much with free agency and the money that they're throwing around now that you don't have the continuity with the clubs that you had. When you look at the old Yankees and you go back, they had the same guys playing with each other for years. And now that's not the case. And you hope that when you make one of these trades, and they always say this. Well, the best part of making a baseball trade, if it's helpful for both teams, maybe you got the pitcher that you needed and they got the hitter that they needed. Uh, but again, a lot on health, a lot on supplementing your draft with the kids you get in Latin America. I think have a big part of it. Um, I think that you talked about the Royals. Uh, Not getting away from the subject, one thing that they've done is they picked up Waka and a couple other guys, and their starting pitching has been very good.
Yeah.
They did a good job. They did a good job going after veteran pitchers. And you know what happens a lot of times? The reason that teams are apt to give these pitchers away because I think they felt that their best years are behind them. And okay, we're gonna trade him because I don't think he's going to do any better than he's done when he was with us. Kansas City obviously did a good job watching those guys pitch last year, knowing there was still something in the tank. So if they can get the relief pitching and continue to hit, you've got Witt and a lot of those good young players that are hungry. You have a combination of young and older guys, and I think that combination is really good. I think the older guys have helped, the younger guys and be coaches to some of these young pitchers. And I think Matt Cafaro has done a great job. I'll tell you how old I am, Enrique. I actually scouted Matt when he was at Old Dominion University
Wow.
back in the 80s. And I'll tell you the kind of guy he is. Matt gives me a call about 2 or 3 times a year and says, "Hey, Toombs, I'm just checking on you." That says a lot about a guy.
That's cool.
It really does, and that's the kind of kid he is. And I had lunch with him when he was managing an A ball. He said, "Come on, let's have lunch tomorrow." And we talked baseball, and I was so impressed with Matt. I mean, he's been around. He was the bench coach with Cleveland, very well respected. I mean, this isn't his first rodeo. I mean, he's a solid baseball guy, and I think you're going to see that he's going to hang around a long time and have a great baseball career, whether it be coaching or managing.
That's great. I mean, I love you. You obviously can't see I just the names that you're throwing out, the people that I know that you know. I mean, grinning from ear to ear. I think every Royals fan that's going to listen to this is just going to be in awe the entire time. Seriously, I mean that particular team. And look, I don't know. How did you live in Kansas City during this
No,
time, or
no,
no?
I
No.
was always living in the Washington area because they needed
Okay.
somebody to cover all these teams. I did free agent stuff for a while, but was mostly on the pro side for trades and everything else. And talking about the fans in Kansas City to tie the loose ends together, I want to thank them for how about that parade we had after the World Series?
Yeah.
What a turnout that we had in that city. And for those people to come out and for the scouts to be a part of the parade and to be thanked for their hard work, the front office, the girls and the secretaries in the office, the whole organization are to be commended because it takes so long to get there, but it doesn't take long for things to go south in,
Right.
in our in our in our game. It's hard to keep everybody together. Guys get a little bit older, so if you do it once in your lifetime, it is what I want to say, a lifetime experience that you'll carry with you the rest of your life. I think about it from time to time and say, wow, those are great times. So it's an honor to be and to work for a guy like Dayton Moore, who in my mind is not only a great baseball guy, but one of the best human beings that walks on the face of this earth. He's a super person. He took good care of his. He gave a lot of guys in baseball a chance to have jobs that they might not even have had with other ball clubs. And he had confidence in those guys, and he had the courage of his conviction. And I'll always be grateful for Dayton to let me do a lot of different things, work in the academy in Dominican, advanced scout, international scout, free agent scout. I wore a lot of different hats, and I'm grateful to Dayton for giving me those opportunities.
So I have a few more questions for you here so we can wrap up. I again I appreciate all the time that you've given me. Seriously, Mike, I really do
Well,
appreciate
I
it.
enjoy it as long as anything that has to do with baseball is, I'm a lifer.
Yeah,
So
there
that's
you
that's
go.
that's, that's what it is.
No, I appreciate it. And I would love for you to come on in the future again, just to talk ball. Maybe we can go do some BP later down the road too if you got
Well,
time.
I'd like to have some question and answer stuff for the fans.
Oh,
I certainly don't have all the answers, but I love talking to the fans and
yeah.
helping people. Like I said, that's I don't have all the answers, but maybe I could help a kid with a technique or a parent with what to look for going to, because that's the biggest decision a kid's going to make other than who he's going to marry. I mean, that's
Right.
going to college. That's a big decision for these families, and they've never been through that process. A lot of them,
Right.
and they don't know. So
No, oh, I appreciate that. Well, hey, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that just heard that and they're like, "Oh, I got to talk to Mike Toomey." So you're opening up the floodgates, but I definitely know that um, teaching ball to kids is also a passion of yours. Like that's no secret. And so I appreciate that. But something that I wanted to talk about, one of the last few things here, I talked to you about this a little bit before we hopped on here, was one of the more controversial topics in baseball, which is the pitch count. Some people hate it, some people love it. More so, the people that love it are the ones that don't like sitting at a 3.5 hour baseball game. And those who hate it are more so the players who have to deal with the ramifications that this particular rule has. Um, pitchers such as like Justin Verlander, for a guy to reference, he has been openly critical about the pitch count. Um, I just want to get your opinion on that. What you think the pitch count has done for the game? Do you think it has affected pitching, players in particular, rotations? Just what are your thoughts on that?
well, that's a great question, and it's different strokes for different folks. And I will say this:
I love that.
I'm going back to Ray Miller, who was a great pitching coach for Baltimore and with Pittsburgh. And I was at a clinic. It was probably the greatest clinic I've ever been to. It was Frank Robinson. It was Ray Miller, Terry Crawley, who was a buddy of mine. I love sitting at the games with Terry. What a great hitting guy. It was Elrod Hendricks, Frank Robinson, Ray Miller, Terry Crawley. Those were some of the guys that were there. And I'll never forget this with Ray Miller. He said, work fast, throw strikes, change speeds. So Ray would love what's going on now, and I think, and even with kids that walk around the mound and they take time in between pitches, I think there's a tendency for negative thoughts to creep in. What am I going to throw on this pitch? Oh, I better not do this to this guy. I better do that for that guy. I've always liked guys to work at a little quicker tempo. But here's the thing: some guys eat slow, some guys eat fast. Some guys some guys walk slow, some guys walk fast. I think the tempo is not the same for everybody. Uh, same in golf. Some guys take their time. They eat slow, they walk slow. So I don't think it's the same for everybody. I do like it from a fan standpoint. I went to so many minor league games over the years. Guys didn't throw strikes, and the games were 4.5, sometimes 5 hours, and then it had
Wow.
fireworks, and you couldn't get out of the stadium. And you've been there from since 2 o'clock watching BP, and you'd be at the ballpark from 2 o'clock up until 11:30 some days. It's a long day, and then have to write reports on the guys. So, but getting back to the question, I think it's a double-edged sword, really. I think it depends on the pitcher. I think it does put some pressure on the pitcher. Uh, but I think if we can find a middle ground there somewhere in between, I think it would be good. But it's different for different guys. There was a pitcher for the Mets. I can't think of his name. He was a wiry guy about 12, 15 years ago they called him, he was like Mike Hargrove in between, took the human rain delay. I mean, it was brutal. But to answer your question, I do like it probably more than I don't, but I'm not a pitcher, so I can't, you know, speak for that. But I will say the one thing that I remember, and I've tried to get some of our kids to do, is I think it helps the tempo, where a kid gets in a rhythm. That's the way I've always felt about it. And I kind of temper my way towards that. But in the major leagues, guys have routines. It's a little bit different. So, but it's a great question. And I don't know that there's a one correct answer, but those are some of my thoughts on it, Enrique. So
Cool. Well, thank you. I mean, I know that's definitely has been a hot topic of conversation. Lastly, here, I just want to get your thoughts on what you think the Royals are looking like right now. I think this is Well, no, I don't think. I know this is the best start that the Royals have had in n nearly a decade. I mean, 17 and 10 right now. They've had two different win streaks. First going on a 7-game win streak, and they hit a little bit of a lull, lost like 3 games in a row. Then they're back up, winning 4 games in a row. Up to this point today, they're currently playing Detroit. I don't know what the current score is right now, but they won yesterday 8-0. I just want to get your thoughts on what you think of the Royals this season. Any particular players that stand out to you? Obviously, that massive contract that we gave Bobby Witt. I think that was huge, especially given the fact that it's a small market team, Midwest Kansas City. It's not like your LA Dodgers, your New York Yankees, Mets. Like it's not that type of team. It's not that type of ball club city. But the fact that we were able to sign a guy like that and not lose him to one of those big market teams, I think spoke a lot to a lot of people. So yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on that and if I should get my hopes up or not.
No, just like we talked before, I think as long as these teams can stay around the just above 500, especially that I haven't looked at the standings in that league, but I would think that everybody would be kind of in the race and they're pretty tight. Am I right on that? I mean, there's
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
absolutely.
so I think everybody's going to be in there, and I think that if they can continue to pitch the way they are and stay healthy, I mean, you've got a guy like Salvador Perez. He's no kid anymore, but boy, he loves to play. He's not going to come out of there. But I
Nope.
think it's important to give him a couple days rest off, put him over there at first base where he's off of his haunches. Um, I think that's important. Of course, Witt's a great player, and I like the center fielder. What's his name? Is it Isley or
Oh,
he's?
Isbell.
I like Isbell. I think he's a good player. Um, I think they have. I think they're pretty solid around the field. There's a lot of guys, honestly, Enrique, that I don't know. There's a lot of new faces there. I
Yeah,
do know that I do know the pitcher that has come over with the Mets and does a hell of a job. Um, remind me,
that's right. Oh, the name is slipping my mind as well. I also know we got that guy Smith. Um,
yeah,
was it from
they've all
the Texans,
they've
right?
always liked him. They've always liked him. But I think that the relief pitching is certainly something that we had probably the best relief corps that you could ever want when we were there. Davis and Santana, God rest
Oh
his
my
soul,
gosh, yeah, yeah,
yeah, who passed away in an accident in Dominican. And we just had it was if we got to the lead, if we got in the lead with a seventh inning, it was over.
oh yeah. Wade
And
Davis, that guy was an absolute dog. I loved Wade Davis, Johnny Cueto too, guys like that. Yeah,
yeah, and Cueto added a little animation to the game, which was
yeah,
good for the game. And I think the biggest difference going forward and how they're going to end up the season is, of course, the health with Perez, and also they certainly don't have the relief corps that we had back then.
right.
I think the relief pitching would probably be the key going forward. Uh, that's my thought on that. But solid club, like I said, a good mix of veterans and young guys, and when that happens, I think it's a good thing. Just keeping that camaraderie together, and a clubhouse is really, really important. It's really, very much important. That's one thing. Bobby Hurley, who had the Connecticut Basketball Clubs, talks about how important that is. And there was a couple of I'm not a big social media guy, but on Twitter, if you go to Bobby Hurley's uh, post on talking about how one guy can bring the whole club down, it was excellent. It was an excellent 2 or 3 minute talk on how important it is to get the right guys and have a good clubhouse and keep the bad guys away from the good guys.
Yeah,
So, but that's where we are. And I follow Kansas City, of course, and that's my club, and I'm a big fan of Matt, and uh, wish them all well.
that's awesome. Well, hey, if any Royals personnel or are listening right now, you heard it from Mike Toomey. Get that relieving core together, and we're winning the 2024 World Series. Thank you, Mike, again for being on here. Before we hop off here, is there anything that you want to plug? I know you have a foundation. Anything you're doing right now, anywhere that we could, or I could send people to donate to anything. This is your time to really boast about that.
Well, we have a website, CBF, Colombian Baseball Foundation, and where we continue to try to help these kids with bats, balls, uniforms, shoes. That's what we use it for. We have to pay the guys who work on the field. There's a lot more that goes into it, but you know, they don't. You don't have to go crazy. I remember Clemson had a thing where it was $10 for all the students. It was called IPTAY. Pay $10 a year, but no, if you go to CBF, Colombian Baseball Foundation.net, it will give you a feel for what we do. There's three little lines up top. There's one for news and there's one for current stuff. And they have accepted us very well down there. I have a couple of scouts I hired, Rafael Miranda and his son Wilmer, and Carlos Chevarria, who really was the guy that got me to go down there, have been fabulous. And any contribution, small contribution would be helpful. And that would be great. It has where to send to, or you could send a message or a phone call. And the other thing that I wanted to speak out about was DeMatha High School, where I coached the last few years. I couldn't do it this year because of my mother's death in June, and having the two houses now and the paperwork was overwhelming. But I got to give a plug to Coach Steve Miller, who has done such a great job with those kids. He's a tireless worker. It's over in Hyattsville, Maryland, where they've had so many great basketball teams. But they're going to be in there in the playoffs. They're 21-4, and I'm really pulling for Steve and the rest of the staff and the kids who I coached. I love them, and I wish them all the very best. So I needed to give them a plug and wish them well in the upcoming Catholic WCAC playoffs. So that's where I am.
That's great. Mike, again, thank you so much for being on. A lot of people are going to love listening to this and will benefit from your knowledge of baseball and your experience of being a scout. So again, I want to thank you again. I'm so happy my dad ran into you at Lifetime because this is super dope. It's so cool. I'm so happy I was able to talk to you. And um, yeah, again, I would love to have you on in the future. Love to meet you in person sometime soon. Maybe we can even get a lift in. Um, so yeah, again, I appreciate you being on, and again, I know you've been very generous with your time, so I really appreciate you
Well, it's an
doing this for
honor
me.
honor to be on your show today. I really enjoyed it. So God bless and take care, and uh, one day at a time.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.